On paper, President Biden has been one of the most productive and successful Democratic presidents in recent history. In addition to signing over 300 pieces of bipartisan legislation, he also united his party to pass the Inflation Reduction Act against total Republican opposition. He's appointed over 100 federal judges, outpacing former Presidents Donald Trump, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush. And his economic strategy has proved very solid so far, with a stronger than expected jobs report this month and unemployment dropping to its lowest rate in over 50 years. It's a really strong record. So why are there still people out there asking if he should run again in 2024? I'm joined now by Donna Edwards, a former Democratic congresswoman from the great state of Maryland, and Mike Lux, the board chair of the political organization American Family Voices. He served in President Clinton's administration as special assistant to the president for public liaison and on the 1992 Clinton campaign. Welcome to you both. So, Donna, I'll start with you. It sounds pretty good to me. What's the deal? You got Mark Leibovitz writing today, quote, in private, many elected Democrats say Biden's too old to run again and that they wish he'd step away, which aligns with what large majorities of Democrats and independents have been telling pollsters for months. The public silence around the president's predicament has become tiresome and potentially catastrophic for the Democratic Party. Have you heard that kind of talk? And why is it out there?
Well, I'll tell you what, Michael, I talked to a lot of elected Democrats, and I have not heard that from them. I've heard people who are prepared to unite behind the president. They see an opportunity to keep the Senate and to regain the House of Representatives. They know to do that. They don't need to have a food fight among Democrats like we're going to see on the other side. And so, so I think Democrats are feeling, elected Democrats, especially after the midterms, are feeling really strongly about uniting behind the president.
So, Mike, you had the president on foreign soil just recently, traveling into an active war zone without American troop presence on an epic 10-hour train ride as well. Clearly, the man is not too old to do all of that. So I just don't understand. I get the age conversation, but it seems to be outsized given the way the president has performed.
Well, it has. You look at him during the State of the Union, where with going back and forth with the hecklers. I mean, he did an amazing job. I've been watching State of the Unions. I've helped write a State of the Unions in the Clinton White House. I've never seen a State of the Union that good. Strong energy going back and forth. And, Michael, we just did a major study of working class voters across battleground states. And they really love the Clinton agenda, or excuse me, the Biden agenda when they hear about it. They don't. A lot of them don't know about it. They live in news bubbles, news deserts. Right. They aren't hearing about it from. But when they hear about it, they love it. And I think this is actually a generational opportunity. This guy has gotten more done for working class folks than any president has in 60 years. And when voters start to hear about that, I think they're going to respond.
Well, that's an interesting point because, Donna, recent polling is showing that a majority of Democrats and independents, I think 50% actually, think that Biden is the party's best bet for 2024. But 45% think someone else has a better shot. So what's behind the discrepancy? We lay out this incredible body of work that he's accomplished. 50% of the base vote and independents are like, yeah, but then you've got this niggly sort of group of folks out there saying, no, not really.
Well, I mean, look, I think that anytime you have a president who, age, I think, is part of their consideration. But the reality is that Joe Biden's president. He's a Democrat. He's the incumbent. He's running for re-election. Right. And I think that, you start looking at polling numbers. His polling numbers have been creeping upwards as the economy really does seem to be very stabilized. Even, inflation, he's, getting a handle on that. And I think that over this next year, you are going to have a rollout of roads and bridges and infrastructure and all of that that is going to solidify the support behind the president.
And I would add one thing, Michael, which is that we've just seen how much? $500 million worth of negative ads, all attacking Joe Biden on the economy. Obviously, people have been hearing those ads. It affects people. But now the president has a chance to, as Donna said, roll out all the accomplishments, talk about all the accomplishments, and run a campaign. And he's been an incredibly effective president. He's doing great. When I heard the details of that grueling trip to the Ukraine, I was like, wow, this guy's in better shape than I am.
No, that's right. While we were sleeping.
While we were sleeping, right. I mean, but it does say a lot about how the president has the ability to sort of draw people into that part of the conversation, and certainly when he's contrasted with Trump. So, Mike, that polling also shows that, you know, if Trump is the guy on the other side, there's much more rallying around Biden as the only Democrat who can actually beat Donald Trump. What does that say? And if it's not Trump, does Biden still bring that level of gravitas based on his record and his performance so far?
You know, in the study that we did, we looked at the counties that went the hardest for Trump, the most dramatic turn toward Trump of any counties in the country. Counties that Obama had carried, that Trump carried by big numbers. And what we found was that in those counties that we had done so badly in, that Biden is actually running pretty well. People don't know about the bills he passed yet. People don't know about the record yet. But they still are giving him pretty good grades, and that's not only against Trump, but that's against other Republicans as well.
So, Donna, we got less than a minute left. I want to get you with this one. Is there, given everything that we've seen so far, is there the space for the president to pick up that support and solidify it within the Democratic base? There are some challenges, some rumbling of potential challenges in the primary. What's your take for the president setting himself up for a 2024 bid?
First of all, I don't really think the country has a stomach for a primary challenge among Democrats. Democrats don't have the stomach for it. I also think that among Democrats, he has the ability, Biden does, to speak to working class voters in the rural areas and other areas, and to speak to the base of the party. Biden is the one who can do that. I don't see any other Democrats who are able to do that.
I don't either. Donna Edwards and Mike Lux, thank you both very, very much. That is All In on this Monday night. I'm Michael Steele in for Chris Hayes. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.